Hello and welcome to pmblounge.com. In this mini series of group creativity techniques, today we are looking into affinity diagrams. So, what are affinity diagrams? How can they be helpful, right, for your project group, the group of stakeholders, right? Come up with creative ideas and help you in the entire process of collect requirements. We have gone over different techniques of the group creativity, different techniques in the group creativity techniques basically, and all of them will be available in the description below. In fact, in the next slide we are going over how and where does group creativity techniques fit into the scheme of things and fit into the entire syllabus that you need to study for your PMP exam. So let's get started. If you have already seen any of the videos of group creativity techniques, the next slide is going to be a repetition, so you can feel free to skip that one. All right, so first up, the knowledge area that we are discussing here is scope management. So this is the scope management knowledge area. This is where group creativity techniques fall, but where exactly in scope management knowledge area? So one of the processes of this knowledge area is known as collect requirements. So collect requirements is the process, and tools and techniques of collect requirements is where group creativity techniques comes up, and one of the group creativity techniques is affinity diagram. So I hope you can see the entire picture. The knowledge area that we are talking about is scope management. The process within scope management knowledge area that we are discussing is collect requirements, and the tools and techniques of collect requirements, many of the tools and techniques of collect requirements, among those many, one of them is group creativity techniques, and one of this group creativity techniques, one of these is known as affinity diagrams. There are other tools and techniques of collect requirements process, which are interviews, focus groups, facilitated workshops, group decision making techniques, and all of them we have already discussed in our previous videos. The link to the entire playlist will be available in the description below. So I hope it's clear now why we are talking about affinity diagrams and where do they fit in the entire scope of PMP study. Now let's get down to it. Let's try to understand what affinity diagrams are. So affinity diagrams, the whole concept of affinity diagrams is to group similar ideas together so that they can be categorized and then worked upon. So, if you're sitting in a room with 10 different people and you're talking about something, you're coming up with ideas, right, for your next project, there will be ideas that can, vary from ocean to the sky. That's how they say it, right? And everything in between. You'll have a lot of ideas from ocean to the sky and everything in between. So, how do you categorize them? That is when affinity diagrams come into the picture. So, you kind of take down all the ideas that people are coming up with. You take down all those ideas and then you try to categorize them together, right, so that these categories can be then worked upon, right? And it basically, uh, you are able to focus more on each categories than looking into a single idea in its entirety. So categorizing requirements often help in coming up with new ones as well. So when you're categorizing requirements, other team members can come up with new ones in the same category. So this kind of helps with collecting requirements, definitely. Now, affinity diagrams are also known as KJ diagram or Kawakita diagram, as it was invented by Jiro Kawakita. So you should be aware of all the different names that are, given to certain processes and certain concepts in the PMP exam, because you never know, you might be given a situation of affinity diagram in the exam, but you'll never find affinity diagram in one of the options. In fact, you'll find KJ diagram or Kawakita diagram as an option, which would be the correct answer, right? But you'll not be able to mark it correctly because you would never know that one of the names of affinity diagram was KJ diagram or the Kawakita diagram. So it's important to know different names of same concepts. We have made a video on this actually, and I'll definitely find out and link it in the description below so that you can go over that video as well. Now, typically post-it notes with ideas written on them are used so that they can be moved around as and when required. So post-it notes, I'm pretty sure if you're a project manager, you're definitely aware of them and you've definitely used them because it's something uh, typically people who plan tend to use a lot, right? So post-it notes is used when it comes to affinity diagrams. Let's look at a picture of affinity diagram so that you have a better idea of how it looks like. So it might be a bit scary, but this is how an affinity diagram looks like. And if you kind of see, you can see that some of the ideas, right, they are categorized together. So they are led by a heading, and then you have all the ideas under them, right? So this is how categorizing the ideas help basically, right? So that when it comes to project or anything that you're trying to accomplish through your um, affinity diagram, you can kind of focus on certain things. So let's say if you're trying to, if you decide that you'll be taking up only these two highlighted requirements, one and two, then the entire team can work only on these, right? So that's how it works. Basically, this is how a typical affinity diagram looks like. But let's get into the details and try to understand how you can make your own affinity diagram. So for simplicity's sake, we took up an example that I found on the internet, and it talks about it's basically an affinity diagram about a camera. So let's talk about the features. What all should be the features? Once you come up with this heading, right? If you're sitting in the room with 5 different people and talking about how the camera should look like, somebody might say we need long battery life. Somebody might come up saying that we need to have a separate viewfinder. Somebody might say that there should not be any delay in turning it on. And somebody might say that, well, the what's most important for me is that the camera should be reasonably priced. So if you see, all of these are basically part of different heads, right? These are part of different categories. While long battery life is something which is a feature of the camera, having a separate viewfinder is something which is part of composing picture category, right? No delay in turning on is something which is part of responsiveness. Reasonably priced is a category under the value that the camera should provide, right? So when you come up with these four heads, these four categories, what is going to happen is someone in your group will start to think around features and might come up with another idea that large picture storage capacity should be one of the feature of the camera. Somebody else might come up and say, okay, when it comes to responsiveness, I think one other thing that we can add in this category is that there should not be any delay in taking the picture, right? And similarly, somebody might come up and say, well, I don't need any delay in picture taking, but at the same time, the camera should be very easy to use. And this comes up in a different category of ease to use. So when you create a different category of ease to use, one other person in the group might come up and say, okay, I think it should be easy to select picture modes as well. There are different modes in the camera, right? So while you're talking about picture modes, somebody else in the group might say, yeah, I think while it should be easy to select picture modes, the camera should be able to take action pictures as well. Now, when you're talking about action pictures, you have definitely created a new category of features that are required or expected out of the product, which is picture capabilities, right? So this is how basically an affinity diagram works. You, based on the ideas that come up in the group discussion, you form different categories, and then the group tends to think within those categories and you come up with the entire requirements for your next product. So that is how this entire concept is helpful in coming up with requirements and collecting requirements for your project. So that is all that we had in this video. Hope you learned something about affinity diagrams. Like I said, group creativity techniques is an important topic in from exam perspective. You can definitely expect a question or two from these concepts. Subscribe to this YouTube channel so you don't miss out on such videos in the future. And check us out on our social media, facebook.com/PMP Lounge and twitter.com/PMP Lounge. And as always, do check out the website pmplounge.com, your number one free resource for PMP certification and project management industry information. Thank you.